Russia just lost something. It paid more than $1 billion to build, and it took Ukraine roughly the cost of a used pickup truck to do it. In the early hours of April 4th in occupied Crimea, the radar of an S-400 Triumph Moscow's flagship long-range air defense system, the same kind they sell to allies as untouchable, was burning. The drone that killed it didn't fly through electronic warfare. It flew through it like the jamming wasn't even there. Because the link between that drone and its pilot was not a radio signal at all. It was a strand of fiber-optic glass, thinner than a human hair, trailing behind the drone like a spider's thread. And here's what Vladimir Putin's generals are realizing tonight. This wasn't a one-off lucky shot. This was the 12th Russian air defense system the same brigade has erased from the map in the first 2 weeks of April alone, according to Brovdy's own public report. The unit doing it has a name now. They're called Madyar's birds, and what they've built behind Russian lines is something the Kremlin has no answer for, not technologically, not industrially, and not politically. Stay with us, because what we're about to show you is how a single drone brigade is rewriting the rules of modern warfare in real time, and why the dollar math behind it should terrify every armored division on the planet. Now let's set the stage. The 414th Separate Brigade of Unmanned Strike Aviation Systems, better known by its call sign Madyar's Birds, wasn't always a brigade. According to Ukrainian military records and reporting from Euromaidan Press, it started in February 2022 as a single platoon in the Territorial Defense Forces, founded by a Ukrainian businessman turned volunteer fighter named Robert Brovdy, call sign Madyar. He bought commercial drones with his own money and flew reconnaissance over Kherson. By January 2024, that platoon had become Ukraine's first dedicated drone strike battalion. By December 2024, it tripled in size to a full brigade. And by 2026, Brovdy was no longer just commanding the brigade. He had been promoted to major and put in charge of Ukraine's entire unmanned systems forces. The new branch of service, Kyiv, stood up in September 2024, specifically to integrate every robotic and unmanned system across the air, ground, and sea. To put that into context, what started as one volunteer with a quadcopter is now the umbrella command for every drone unit in the Ukrainian military. According to the brigade's own combat record reported by Euromaidan Press and Censor.net, Madyar's birds have already racked up a 110-day defense of Bakhmut deep operations in Krinky on the left bank of the Dnipro and the destruction of a Russian Borisogledsk II electronic warfare complex near Pokrovsk in November 2024, using a long-range Vampire drone. By the end of 2025, the brigade was producing tens of thousands of its own drone munitions in-house, running its own pilot training program, and recruiting volunteers from Poland, Germany, and across the EU. And the numbers from Brovdy's own Telegram and Facebook channels tell the story Moscow doesn't want you hearing. According to a report he released on February 17th of this year, Ukraine's drone forces hit 240 high-value targets inside Russia and Russian-occupied territory in just the first 48 days of 2026. That's an average of 5 strategic strikes every single day: oil refineries, power substations, military airfields, ammunition depots, command posts, radars, and fuel trains. Now that brings us to the night of December 25th to 26th, 2025. According to the Kyiv Post, Ukrinform, and an assessment by the Institute for the Study of War, S-400, dated December 26th, drone operators of the first separate center of the Unmanned Systems Forces conducted a planned reconnaissance and strike mission in occupied Berdyansk Donetsk Oblast, roughly 125 kilometers from the front line. Their target was the command post and barracks of Russia's 14th Spetsnaz Brigade, a GRU Special Forces Unit, based out of the city of Ussurisk. normally tasked with deep reconnaissance and sabotage missions for the Russian General Staff. Brovdy himself announced the result on Facebook the next morning. 51 Russian operators killed, 74 wounded. More than 120 Special Forces casualties, total an entire elite unit gutted in a single night by drones from over 100 kilometers behind the front line. Drones struck 5 buildings, with one of them hit twice. And here's what makes it surgical. These weren't soldiers caught in a trench by a shell. These were GRU operators, the men Russia trains for years to be undetectable. And a Ukrainian drone team identified them, tracked them, and erased half of them in their own beds. But that's just the beginning. Because what Madyar's birds did to a Special Forces unit in December, they are now doing every single night to the most expensive things Russia has on the battlefield. According to defense industry reporting from Defense Express, on April 4, 2026, the 9th Kairos Battalion of the 414th Brigade struck the 92N6E multifunctional radar of an S-400 Triumph system near Feodosia in occupied Crimea. That radar is the brain of the entire S-400 complex. It tracks targets out to 600 kilometers. It can guide up to 72 missiles simultaneously, and without it, the launchers and missiles around it are blind deaf and useless. The operation was confirmed personally by Brovdy on Telegram. According to him, the system, quote, can be deployed in 5 minutes and usually changes position before it is detected. This time the drones were faster. Now this is where things get even more serious for the Kremlin. So let's break down exactly how Ukraine is doing this, because the technology behind these strikes is the part Moscow desperately doesn't want NATO seeing. The first piece of the puzzle is the fiber-optic FPV drone. According to reporting from CEPA, the Center for European Policy Analysis, and a detailed technical breakdown from Military Machine published in late March 2026, a fiber-optic FPV is exactly what it sounds like. Instead of being controlled by radio waves like a regular first-person view drone, it trails a glass cable thinner than a human hair behind it. The pilot's commands and the drone's video feed travel through that cable as pulses of light. The result, there is nothing for Russian electronic warfare systems to jam, intercept, or spoof. The drone flies through the densest jamming environment on the planet, as if the jamming doesn't exist. The second piece is artificial intelligence. According to an early April 2026 report from the Kyiv Post, citing a Russian war correspondent named Sergei Kolyasnikov and an analyst named Chadayev, Ukraine is now fielding a new generation of AI-guided drones the Russians have nicknamed Martians. They cruise at up to 300 kilometers per hour. They navigate without GPS. They identify targets without an operator. And in Kolyasnikov's own words, quoted on Russian state-adjacent channels, they are undetectable by conventional detectors and protected from electronic warfare. Read that again. A Russian war correspondent is publicly admitting that Ukraine has built a drone Moscow cannot detect, cannot jam, and cannot escape. The third piece is scale. In 2024, Ukraine produced just over 1 million FPV drones domestically. By 2025, that target had climbed to 2 million. And as of April 1, 2026, the European Commission announced it is mobilizing 45 billion euros for Ukraine in 2026 alone, with 28.3 billion of that earmarked specifically for defense industrial capacity, with a focus, in the words of European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, on Ukraine's cutting-edge drone industry. On top of that, the United Kingdom announced 120,000 additional drones for Ukraine in a single package on April 15th. The Netherlands committed 248 million euros to a joint Dutch-Ukrainian drone production line. Germany signed a €4 billion defense package including joint drone production. And Romania and Ukraine launched a €200 million joint drone factory under the EU SAFE program. Now, before we get to the third scenario, this is a quick reminder that you're watching Military Outlook. We bring you the full picture of modern warfare, the technology, the doctrine, and the consequences, not just the headlines. So hit subscribe to ensure you stay ahead of the curve. Here's what that European money buys. By the end of this year, Ukrainian and EU industry analysts assess that the combined Ukraine plus Europe drone production line could push toward 4 million units annually. 4 million precision strike weapons, each one capable of finding a tank, a fuel tanker, a radar, or a general's bunker. Each one priced between $500 and $2,500. And each one able to destroy something costing tens of millions. Now ask yourself, when has any military in history been on the receiving end of that math? The answer is none. Russia is the test case. And that brings us to the third and perhaps most dangerous scenario for the Kremlin: the systematic blinding of Russian air defense across the entire occupied territory. According to data compiled by OSINT analyst Clément Mollin and reported by United 24 Media in late March 2026, Ukraine carried out at least 44 successful strikes against Russian air defense systems in just the first 3 months of 2026. That includes Buk M1, Buk M2, and Buk M3 launchers, Tor M1 and Tor M2 short-range systems, Panzer S-1 close-in defense, S-300V long-range launchers, and as we covered, S-400 radars in both Crimea and Tula. Now look at what Madyar's birds specifically delivered in just the first 2 weeks of April 2026. According to Euromaidan Press, citing Brovdy's own telegram on April 14th, 4 Ukrainian drone units coordinating through the Deep Strike Center put 12 Russian air defense systems out of action in 14 days. On April 10th alone, the 9th Kairos Battalion destroyed a Tor M1 in Mariupol, struck a Panzer S-1 in Donetsk Oblast, and hit a rear base of Russia's southern military district. 2 days later, on April 16th, according to the Kyiv Post, citing Brovdy, directly the unmanned systems forces hit 16 high-value Russian targets in a single 24-hour cycle, including 2 Iskander operational tactical missile launchers near Madyar and Kurortne in Crimea. Iskanders, the same launchers Russia uses to terror bomb Ukrainian cities. This is what military analysts call SEAD suppression of enemy air defenses. It is the doctrine NATO spent the entire Cold War perfecting, and Ukraine is now executing it with hand-built quadcopters guided by glass fiber. The real problem for Russia is this: once the radars go down, the launchers around them are deaf. Once the launchers go down, the airspace above is open. And once the airspace is open, Ukrainian Storm Shadow cruise missiles, ATACMS Neptune missiles, and the new domestically built Flamingo cruise missile can fly through that hole and destroy the targets behind it. According to United 24 Media, that's exactly how the Kremlin EL microelectronics plant in Bryansk, Russia's second-largest supplier of chips for Iskander missiles, and yes, S-400 systems themselves, was hit by Western Storm Shadow cruise missiles after Ukrainian drones tore the radar coverage open. So what we're watching is not just a tactical success, it's a doctrinal collapse. Russia spent 20 years and tens of billions of dollars building what was supposed to be the most layered, integrated air defense system on Earth. And a brigade that started with a man named Madyar buying commercial quadcopters with his own money is dismantling it week by week in front of cameras with the receipts posted to Telegram. Now that brings us to the fourth and final piece, the part that should keep Putin's generals up at night: the map. Look at where the strikes are landing. Berdyansk, Mariupol, Donetsk, Luhansk, Feodosia, Yevpatoria, Tula, Bryansk. These aren't frontline trenches. These are the rear. The places Russia's logistics, command, and supply lines are supposed to be safe. According to a Euromaidan press analysis from April 17th, Donetsk used to be Russia's secure rear area. Now AI drones hunt Russian supply trucks there in broad daylight. The 92N6E radar at Feodosia was 600 kilometers from the front in operational terms, and it still wasn't safe. That GRU command post in Berdyansk was 125 kilometers from the front, and 51 men died in their barracks anyway. And here's where the strategic picture turns truly dark for Moscow. The economics of this war have inverted. For the first time in modern military history, the cheapest weapon on the battlefield is consistently destroying the most expensive. According to public estimates from CEPA and Forbes Defense, reporting a single S-400 battery costs roughly $500 million before you count the launchers, the missiles, the radar trucks, and the trained crews. A Tor-M. One system runs around $25 million per launcher. A Panzer S-1 close-in defense vehicle costs roughly $15 million. An Iskander launcher with its associated vehicles can run $50 million or more. And the FPV drones eating those systems alive between $500 and $2,500 apiece. That is a kill ratio of roughly 10,000 to 1 in raw dollar terms, and the math only gets worse for Russia every time another European drone factory spins up a production line. Now, the second-order effect of all this is what strategists call attrition cascading. The strike on the GRU command post in Berdyansk doesn't just kill 51 operators. It eliminates the men who would have run reconnaissance for Russian assault groups across an entire sector for the next 6 months. The strike on the S-400 radar in Feodosia doesn't just blind one battery. It opens an air corridor for Ukrainian Storm Shadow and Neptune missiles to fly through and hit the next target on the list, which, according to a Crimea attack summary published by Wikipedia and confirmed by Intent.Press on April 23rd, is exactly what happened. On the night of April 23rd, Ukrainian units hit a P-18 radar near Yevpatoria, a missile and artillery weapons depot in Donetsk Oblast, a fuel train in occupied Luhansk, and an oil depot in Feodosia. All in one night. All in the rear. All while Russian state TV told its viewers everything was under control. The third-order effect is even worse. Russian air defense crews now know they are being hunted. According to multiple Russian milblogger sources cited by Defense Express and Kiev, post-Russian operators are increasingly afraid to keep their radars switched on for any sustained period. Because the moment a 92N6E or a Nebo-U starts emitting, Ukrainian electronic intelligence drones triangulate it within minutes, and Madyar's birds are airborne shortly after. So they keep the radars off. But a radar that is off cannot detect incoming drones, missiles, or aircraft. The Russian air defense network is now caught in an impossible loop: turn on and die, or stay off and let everything else die. There is no third option. And while they sit there thinking about it, the strikes keep coming. What this means for Russia is catastrophic. Their air defense network is in tatters, and every system they replace gets hit again within weeks. Their elite GRU operators are being killed in the rear by $500 quadcopters before they ever see a Ukrainian uniform. Their fuel trains are burning before they reach the front. Their Iskander launchers are smoldering on the launch pads in Crimea. Their S-400 radars, the systems they sold to Turkey, India, and China as world-beating, are being neutralized by drones the systems were specifically designed to detect. And their electronic warfare officers, the men who once held the technological edge in this war, are now writing reports, admitting that Ukrainian fiber-optic and AI drones cannot be jammed at all. The diplomatic damage is just as severe. Every photo of a destroyed S-400 radar that hits Western news sites is a sales catastrophe for Russia's defense industry. Foreign buyers who paid hundreds of millions for these systems, Turkey, India, Algeria, Belarus, are watching their purchases burn on Ukrainian Telegram channels in real time. According to Newsweek estimates cited by the Kyiv Post, Russia entered the 2020s with roughly 56 complete S-400 systems. Every loss in Crimea is now a deletion from a finite stockpile that Moscow's broken industrial base cannot replace at anywhere near combat consumption rates. And every loss makes the next sale to a foreign customer harder to close. The Kremlin's nightmare is no longer the front line. It is the 600 kilometers behind it. There is no part of occupied Ukrainian territory that is safe anymore. There is no Russian general who can be sure his command post won't be next. There is no fuel depot, ammunition warehouse, or radar station that Madyar's birds cannot find. And the most dangerous part for Moscow: the factories building those drones aren't just in Ukraine anymore. They're in Romania, they're in the Netherlands, they're in Germany. The European Union has in writing committed tens of billions of euros to mass-produce this weapon at industrial scale. And the man who started with a single quadcopter in Kherson is now in command of all of it. So when Vladimir Putin demands that NATO stop arming Ukraine, when Russian state TV insists that drones are unserious weapons, when Kremlin spokesmen claim Russian air defenses are working, remember the receipts. 240 strategic targets in 48 days. 12 air defense systems in 14 days. 51 Spetsnaz dead in one night. An S-400 radar burning in Crimea. 2 Iskander launchers smoldering on the launch pads. And a brigade that grew from a platoon to a national command structure in less than 4 years. The question isn't whether Russia can stop this. The question is, how much of Russia's military will be left when it's over? And the answer to that could decide not just the war in Ukraine, but the future of every armored division, every airbase, and every battleship on Earth. That is the reality Moscow is waking up to tonight. If you want to stay on top of how modern warfare is being rewritten in real time, subscribe to Military Outlook and turn on notifications. We'll see you on the next one.